Introduction. We live in a world where everybody wants to be liked, where acceptance feels like the highest currency and approval is the ultimate prize. But I came to tell somebody today, let them hate you, because if everybody is applauding you, you might not be standing for anything. If nobody is criticizing you, you might not be making a difference. If you're doing something bold, something God-given, something that breaks the mold, there will always be opposition. I want you to understand something today. Not everyone is going to celebrate your purpose. Some people will resent it, some people will try to sabotage it, and some will flat out hate you for it. Look at Joseph. He had a dream, and he didn't even get a chance to grow into it before people started hating him for it. And not just any people, his own brothers. The people who were supposed to support him, love him, and have his back were the first ones to betray him. Why? Because his dream was bigger than their expectation. See, there are people in your life right now who are fine with you as long as you stay in your place, as long as you don't outgrow them, as long as you don't start seeing yourself differently than they see you. But the moment you start talking differently, the moment you start moving differently, the moment you start dreaming bigger, they will start hating you. And here's the part that hurts. Some of your biggest critics will be the people closest to you. The family member who tells you, "You're wasting your time." The friend who used to support you but now rolls their eyes when you talk about your goal. The coworker who secretly hopes you fail because they can't stand to see you succeed. People don't like what they can't control. And when you start stepping into your calling, when you start moving in purpose, you become a problem for people who have settled for less, because your growth exposes their stagnation. Criticism is proof that you're doing something right. I need you to catch this. If nobody is criticizing you, you might not be making a difference. If nobody is talking about you, you might not be walking in purpose. Because people don't throw stones at things that aren't worth anything. They don't attack what isn't a threat. Look at Jesus. The moment he started his ministry, the religious leaders started plotting against him. He hadn't even done anything wrong. He was healing people, setting people free, preaching the truth, but instead of celebrating him, they hated him. They called him a fraud. They said he was blaspheming. They tried to twist his words and trap him in his own teaching. Why? Because his calling threatened their comfort. And that's what happens when you start stepping into your God-given purpose. Your presence becomes a problem for people who are comfortable in dysfunction. Don't let their opinions shake your calling. Some of you are so worried about what people are saying about you that you've paused what God has called you to do. You're waiting for approval. You're waiting for validation. You're waiting for people to understand you. But let me set you free today. You don't need their approval to fulfill your purpose. If God called you, that's all the confirmation you need. You don't need their support. You don't need their permission. You don't need their understanding. You just need obedience. Because here's the truth. Some of the people criticizing you today will be the same ones trying to learn from you later. The same brothers who hated Joseph, they had to come to him for help when famine hit. The same people who rejected Jesus, many of them ended up following him. Your critics today might be your audience tomorrow, so don't let their opinions make you quit. Your job is to stay focused. When Nehemiah was rebuilding the wall, he had enemies mocking him the whole time. They sent letters, they spread rumors, they tried to intimidate him. But do you know what he did? He kept building. He literally said, "I am doing a great work and I cannot come down." Some of you need to adopt that mindset. The next time someone tries to discourage you, just tell them, "I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down." The next time someone doubts you, "I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down." Because here's the truth. The enemy doesn't have to destroy you if he can distract you. If he can get you so caught up in defending yourself, proving yourself, fighting battles that don't even matter, he can stop you from fulfilling your assignment. But not this time. This time you're going to stay focused. This time you're going to keep building. This time you're going to let them hate you, because their opinions don't determine your destiny. Rejection hurts. Let's be real about it. There's nothing easy about pouring your heart into something, whether it's a dream, a relationship, a career, an opportunity, only to be told, you're not good enough. We don't need you, or this isn't for you. But I came to tell somebody today, rejection is not the end of the story. Because what if the rejection you're crying over right now is actually God's way of redirecting you to something greater? What if the no that broke your heart was actually God's protection in disguise? Some of us are so busy grieving what didn't work out that we don't even realize we were never supposed to stay there in the first place. Sometimes God blocks it for a reason. Let me take you to the story of Moses. Moses had a heart for justice. He wanted to see his people set free. But the way he went about it at first, it wasn't right. He acted out of anger, killed an Egyptian, and had to flee for his life. He ended up in the wilderness, rejected by both the Egyptians and his own people. I can only imagine Moses thinking, that's it. I ruined everything. I missed my purpose. But what he didn't know was that God wasn't rejecting him. He was redirecting him. Moses thought he was being cast out. In reality, God was setting him apart, because the wilderness wasn't a punishment. It was preparation. Some of you are in a season right now where you feel cast out. You feel like you missed your moment. You feel like people pushed you away, and you're wondering if God has forgotten about you. But listen to me. God hasn't forgotten you. He's preparing you. The job you didn't get, maybe God was protecting you from a toxic environment. The person who walked away, maybe God was making room for someone who will love you right. The door that slammed shut, maybe it wasn't rejection, it was divine redirection. Not every opportunity is your assignment. Some of us are holding on to places and people that God is trying to separate us from. And here's the truth. Not every opportunity is your assignment. Not every open door is meant for you to walk through. And sometimes God will let people reject you so you stop trying to fit into places that were never meant for you. David was overlooked by his own family when Samuel came to anoint the next king. His own father didn't even consider him worthy of being in the lineup. Imagine that, your own father forgetting about you. But the rejection of men didn't stop the call of God, because when the time was right, Samuel called David in from the fields and anointed him. See, God will let people overlook you, but when it's your time, He will call you in. You don't have to fight for a seat at a table that God never built for you. When God has chosen you, no rejection can stop your assignment. Stop chasing what God has closed. Some of us are exhausting ourselves trying to reopen doors that God Himself has closed. You're still texting that person who walked away. You're still trying to prove yourself to people who don't even value you. You're still begging for acceptance from places God has clearly removed you from. But let me ask you, why are you fighting for something that God has already decided isn't for you? God doesn't need your permission to shift your direction. When He sees something is beneath you, He will block it. When He sees something will harm you, He will remove it. And when He sees something greater ahead, He will redirect you, even if it means letting you feel rejection for a season. If they left, let them go. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if they left, let them go. I know it's hard. I know it's painful. I know you thought they would be in your life forever, but some people are seasonal. Judas had to leave so Jesus could fulfill his mission. Joseph's brothers had to sell him out so he could step into his destiny. Some people have to exit your life for you to step into your purpose. Not everyone can go where God is taking you, And that's why you have to stop crying over the ones who walked away. Because if they were meant to be part of your future, they wouldn't have left your present. Rejection is just redirection to something greater. I know it feels like you lost something. But what if you didn't lose? What if you just got free? Free from people who couldn't handle your calling. Free from situations that were draining your potential. Free from relationships that were holding you back. Sometimes the best thing God can do for you is let something not work out. Because when the wrong door closes, the right one can finally open. And when that door opens, you'll look back and realize every no was actually making room for a greater yes. So stop seeing rejection as failure. Start seeing it as God's divine redirection. Because He's not just taking something from you, He's leading you to something better. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt resistance? When was the last time you stepped out in faith, started moving in your purpose, started making changes in your life, and suddenly the opposition showed up? Because if you've been feeling pushback, if you've been dealing with critics, if people have been whispering about you behind your back, I have good news for you. It's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because you're doing something right. People don't attack what isn't a threat. Listen, nobody bothers with something that doesn't matter. Nobody fights against something that isn't making an impact. The enemy isn't worried about people who are stuck. He isn't attacking people who are comfortable. He's after the ones who are moving forward. You start that business, suddenly people say, who do they think they are? You start working on yourself, suddenly your old friends say, oh, so you think you're better than us now. You step into ministry, suddenly people start questioning your past, your motives, your qualifications. Why? Because your progress exposes their stagnation. Some people don't have a problem with you personally, they have a problem with what you represent. You represent growth. You represent change. You represent what they could be if they stopped making excuses, and that makes people uncomfortable. Jesus had haters. Why wouldn't you? Let's get real. Even Jesus had haters. Think about it. He was literally the Son of God, healing the sick, raising the dead, feeding the hungry, setting people free. And instead of celebrating Him, the religious leaders spent their time trying to trap Him, trying to discredit Him, trying to stop Him. They called Him a fraud. They spread rumors about Him. They even said He was working for the devil. Now let me ask you, if Jesus faced opposition, why do you think your life should be any different? If the most perfect, most loving, most anointed person to ever walk the earth had haters, why would you think everyone is going to support you? Haters are a sign that you're walking in purpose. When Nehemiah was rebuilding the wall, he had enemies mocking him the whole time. They sent threats. They tried to distract him. They even tried to get him to come down and argue. But do you know what he said? I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. He understood something powerful. If you stop every time someone criticizes you, you'll never finish what God called you to do. Some of you are spending so much time defending yourself, trying to prove people wrong, trying to change their minds. And you're wasting energy that should be spent building. Let them talk, you keep working. Let them doubt you, you keep building. Let them misunderstand you, you keep walking in purpose. Because their opinions don't control your destiny. Haters reveal who you're becoming. You ever notice how people start treating you differently when you start leveling up? When you were struggling, when you were insecure, when you were stuck in the same cycles, they were fine with you. But the moment you start stepping into confidence, the moment you start seeing yourself differently, the moment you start breaking generational curses and doing something different, people get uncomfortable. Some of you are realizing that people liked the old version of you, the one that stayed silent, the one that settled, the one that made excuses. But now that you're growing, now that you're healing, Now that you're stepping into the person God created you to be, some people don't know how to handle it. And that's okay, because their reaction is not a reflection of your calling. It's a reflection of their own insecurity. Your enemies are part of the plan. What if I told you that God actually uses your haters? Joseph's brothers hated him so much that they threw him into a pit and sold him into slavery. But what they meant for evil, God used for good, because that betrayal put Joseph in the exact place he needed to be for his destiny to unfold. Judas betrayed Jesus, but that betrayal led to the cross, which led to salvation for the world. What if the people trying to tear you down are actually pushing you into purpose? What if the rejection, the rumors, the opposition are actually setting you up for elevation? See, God doesn't just use your friends to bless you, He uses your enemies too. Let your purpose speak louder than their criticism. So what do you do when you face opposition? You don't fight back. You don't waste your breath trying to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You just let your purpose do the talking. Because fruit speaks for itself. You don't have to convince people you're called. Just keep walking in your calling. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone. Just let your results show. You don't have to fight every battle. Just let time reveal what's real. Because the same people who doubt you now will one day have no choice but to acknowledge what God was doing all along. One of the greatest prisons people live in is the prison of other people's opinions. Some of you have been living your whole life with one goal in mind: to get people to like you, to accept you, to validate you, to approve of what you're doing. And today I want to free you from that prison, because you don't need their approval to walk in your purpose. Approval addiction will keep you stuck. Let's be honest, we've all been there. Waiting on someone to say you're good enough. Waiting on family to recognize your worth. Waiting on friends to clap for you. Waiting on people to stop criticizing you so you can finally believe in yourself. And here's the problem with that. If you live for their approval, you'll die by their rejection. If the only reason you believe you're valuable is because people clap for you, what happens when they stop clapping? If the only reason you feel confident is because they compliment you, what happens when the compliments turn to criticism? You can't build your life on people's applause, because their applause is temporary. People are fickle. One day they love you, the next day they turn on you. If your confidence is rooted in their approval, you'll never be stable. You're already approved by God. Here's the truth that will set you free. You don't need their approval because you already have God's approval. Before you performed, before you accomplished anything, before you earned a degree, started that business, got that promotion, or made that decision, God already called you chosen, loved, set apart. He approved you when He created you. He stamped you with purpose when He formed you. The people around you didn't give you your calling, so why are you waiting for them to approve it? Look at Jesus. When He got baptized, the voice of God spoke and said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." That was before Jesus ever preached a sermon, before He healed the sick, before He performed a single miracle. God approved Him before He ever accomplished anything. And the same is true for you. Your worth isn't tied to people's opinions. It's rooted in your identity. Some people will never approve of you, and that's okay. This might sting a little, but you need to hear it. Some people will never approve of you. No matter how much you try to prove yourself, no matter how much you achieve, no matter how much you shrink yourself to fit their expectations, some people are committed to misunderstanding you. They don't want to see you win because your victory reminds them of what they're not doing. They can't celebrate your progress because they're too busy nursing their own insecurity. And here's the thing, you don't need their approval to do what God has called you to do. You don't need their permission to be great. You don't need their applause to keep going. If you live for their approval, you'll miss your assignment. One of the most dangerous things you can do is spend your life trying to fit in with people God called you to stand out from. Some of you have been dimming your light, shrinking your dreams, lowering your standards because you're afraid of what people will think. But let me tell you, the crowd didn't call you, God did. If Noah had waited for people's approval, he never would have built the ark. If Moses waited for Pharaoh's approval, he never would have set the Israelites free. If David waited for Saul's approval, he never would have defeated Goliath. And if Jesus waited for the religious leaders' approval, he never would have gone to the cross. Your assignment is too big to wait for their permission. Your purpose is too important to waste time begging for their acceptance. Stop shrinking to make them comfortable. Some of you have been hiding parts of yourself because you don't want to make other people uncomfortable. You're trying to downplay your gifts, your ideas, your calling, because you're afraid of how people will react. But let me remind you, you weren't created to make people comfortable. You were created to make a difference. And sometimes the difference you're called to make will make people uncomfortable. That's not your problem. You don't have to shrink who you are to fit into spaces that weren't built for you. You don't have to dull your shine so other people can feel better about their shadows. You were made to stand out. You were made to lead. You were made to shift atmospheres and change the game. Let God's approval be enough. Imagine how free you would feel if you stopped chasing validation from people who don't even see your value. Imagine the peace you would walk in if you stopped waiting for their applause and just started moving in obedience. Because here's the truth. When you know you're approved by God, people's opinions lose their power. You stop needing their applause to feel confident. You stop needing their likes, their compliments, their recognition to feel validated. You move in quiet confidence because you know who called you.